David Martinez had always been a man of routine. Every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, he'd kiss his wife Alina goodbye, ruffle the hair of his 10-year-old daughter Sofia, and head to his job at the construction site. For 3 years, this had been their reality since the accident that changed everything. She was still the same little girl who loved to paint, who made up silly songs, and who greeted every day with a smile that could melt the coldest heart. Sofia had been riding her bicycle in their quiet neighborhood when a distracted driver ran a red light. The impact left her paralyzed from the waist down, but somehow, miraculously, it had never dimmed the bright spark in her eyes. She was still the same little girl who loved to paint, who made up silly songs, and who greeted every day with a smile that could melt the coldest heart. But David noticed things changing at home. Alina, once vibrant and full of laughter, had grown distant and irritable. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she rarely smiled anymore. When David tried to talk to her about it, she'd brush him off, claiming she was just tired from caring for Sofia. "It's not easy, David," she'd say, turning away from his concerned gaze. "You get to leave every day. I'm here, dealing with everything alone." David felt the weight of guilt settle on his shoulders. He was working double shifts to pay for Sofia's medical expenses and therapy equipment. The wheelchair, the modified bathroom, the physical therapy sessions, everything cost money they didn't have. He was doing his best to provide for his family, but maybe Alina was right. Maybe he wasn't doing enough at home. On this particular Tuesday morning, something felt different. The foreman at the construction site called an unexpected meeting, sending half the crew home early due to a delayed material delivery. For once, David would be home before 3 p.m., something that hadn't happened in months. As he drove through their neighborhood, David felt a flutter of excitement. Maybe he could surprise Alina and Sofia. Perhaps they could have an impromptu family afternoon together. Sofia loved when he read her stories, and Alina always brightened when he helped with dinner preparations. He pulled into their driveway quietly, wanting to surprise them. The house seemed unusually quiet as he approached the front door. Using his key, David stepped inside, expecting to hear Sofia's cheerful chatter or the sound of Alina moving around the house. Instead, what he heard made his blood run cold. "Stop being such a baby, Sofia. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Alina's voice carried from Sofia's bedroom, sharp and frustrated in a way David had never heard before. Hallway, dread building in his chest with each step. "Mama, please. It hurts when you do it like that," came Sofia's small, trembling voice. David's hand froze on the doorknob. Through the slightly open door, he could see Alina roughly handling Sofia, during what appeared to be a transfer from her wheelchair to the bed. But it wasn't just rough. Alina was gripping Sofia's arms with obvious frustration, her movements jerky and impatient. "I don't have time for this, Sofia. Your father expects everything to be perfect when he gets home, and I'm sick of pretending everything is fine." David watched in shock as Alina yanked at Sofia's clothes while changing her, causing the little girl to wince and cry softly. His wife, the woman he'd married, the mother of his child, was handling their disabled daughter with such callous disregard that David could barely process what he was seeing. But then he saw something that made his heart shatter completely. Despite the rough treatment, despite the obvious pain and fear in her eyes, Sofia reached up with one small hand and gently touched Alina's face. "I'm sorry, Mama," Sofia whispered. "I know you're tired. I love you." The simple act of forgiveness from his 10-year-old daughter toward the mother who was hurting her hit David like a physical blow. Sofia, confined to a wheelchair through no fault of her own, was apologizing to the person who should have been her greatest protector. David pushed open the door, his presence filling the doorframe. Alina spun around, her face flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and defiance. "David, you're home early. It was just I saw what you were doing," David said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. He moved past Alina and knelt beside Sofia's bed, gently taking his daughter's small hands in his larger ones. "Are you hurt, sweetheart?" Sofia's eyes darted between her parents, clearly torn between her loyalty to her mother and her need to be honest with her father. "Daddy, sometimes it hurts, but Mama doesn't mean to. She's just tired because of me." The fact that Sofia was still making excuses for Elena's behavior broke David's heart even further. He looked up at his wife, searching her face for some explanation, some sign of the woman he'd fallen in love with. "Elena, we need to talk." Now, what happened next surprised David more than anything else that day. Instead of defensiveness or anger, Elena collapsed into the chair beside Sofia's bed and began to sob deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. "I can't do this anymore, David," she gasped between tears. "I love her so much, but I'm drowning. Every day, I watch other children running and playing, and I see what Sofia will never have. I'm angry at the world, at that driver, at God, and sometimes that anger comes out wrong. I hate myself for it." David felt his own eyes fill with tears as he began to understand. Elena wasn't a monster. She was a mother breaking under the weight of grief and exhaustion, lashing out at the person closest to her because she didn't know how else to cope with her pain. "Mama, don't cry," Sofia said softly, reaching for Elena with the same forgiveness she'd shown moments before. "I know you love me, even when it hurts. I know you love me." In that moment, David realized that his daughter had learned something about love that many adults never discover. She understood that people could hurt you and still love you. That pain and love could exist in the same space. And that forgiveness didn't mean accepting harm. It meant choosing to see the whole person, not just their worst moments. Over the following weeks, everything changed in the Martinez household. David rearranged his work schedule to be home more, splitting caregiving duties with Elena. They found a support group for parents of disabled children where Elena could express her grief and anger in a safe space with people who understood her struggles. Most importantly, they learned to communicate. Really communicate about their fears, their exhaustion, and their love for Sofia. Elena began seeing a counselor who helped her process her complex emotions about Sofia's disability. And David learned that being a good provider wasn't just about money. It was about being present, even when presence was difficult. Sofia, with the wisdom that sometimes emerges from great trials, became their teacher. She showed them that resilience wasn't about never falling down. It was about how you chose to get back up. She demonstrated that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even imperfectly, and trying to do better tomorrow. 6 months later, David came home early again, this time by choice. He found Elena and Sofia in the backyard, Elena patiently helping Sofia tend to a small garden they'd planted together. Sofia was laughing as she directed her mother on where to plant the marigolds, and Elena's face held a peace David hadn't seen since before the accident. "Look, Daddy," Sofia called out when she saw him. "We're growing a hope garden. Mama says that even when things look impossible, beautiful things can still grow." As David watched his wife and daughter working together, he realized that sometimes the most profound healing doesn't come from avoiding difficult truths, but from facing them with courage and compassion. Their family had been broken, but like Sofia's flowers, they had learned to grow again, not in spite of their scars, but because of how they chose to tend to them. The ending didn't leave them in tears of sorrow, but in tears of gratitude for second chances, for the resilience of the human spirit, and for a little girl who taught them that love, when combined with action and accountability, really can conquer all. Human-like kindness. So more kindness videos, like and subscribe Kindness Records.